Good day, everyone, and welcome to the news behind the news with Ralph Kintav on Mix 94.7 FM. I hope that you guys have been having a great week so far. It is almost the weekend, and as we continue along with our interviews, get behind some of the things that are happening on this island, I have here with me the CEO of GEBE, the temporary CEO, Mr. Mauricio Dembrook.
That's correct.
All right, great. Good afternoon and welcome to the program.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me as well.
Yes, it's good to have you, sir. Of course, well, it is no secret that GB has been in the media for some time now, not necessarily in great light, but at the same time, there's still a lot more that's taking place with the company. There are many questions that people have, and given that you are basically you are appointed to man the fort until stability comes into the company, and I think it is only right to speak a bit about what has been taking place so far, where is the company going, and some of the progress that has been made at GBE.
Right.
So to start off, could you tell us a bit about yourself, a bit about your background, and we can move on from there.
Well, I guess my name is Mauricio Dembrook. I'm officially from Statia. I was born on Statia.
Happy belated Statia Day.
Thank you. I lived on Statia until I was about 15 years old, and left Statia and moved to St. Martin and attended the Milton Peters College. I then went on and went to school in Aruba. And there I did the MTS. I came back and worked for GB for a year and saved my money because at that time I wasn't able to get a scholarship to Holland because there was UNA on Curacao. And they mentioned that if as long as UNA is there and it's a electrical engineering degree and they provided, I was not able to go there. So I decided I wanted to go to Holland still, and I saved my money from working at GB and jumped on a plane and moved to Holland and signed up for school over there. And
how long were you there for?
I was in Holland for about 3 years. I did the short, the intense version of engineering because I did an extra 6 months of physics and mathematics only while I was in Aruba, which prepared me to do they call it propedeuse, within 6 months and not a year that it normally takes. And I did as intensively as possible to be able to finish as soon as possible and leave. So I did a 4-year course in 3 years.
Okay, cool. I was just about to say, that was real quick. That was really just come back.
Yeah, I tried as much as possible to Holland is a nice place, and it's a place where you learn a lot, you meet a lot of people. But the islands are my home. And
gotcha.
And my mom at that time was ill, and I wanted to come back. So I tried my best to finish fast and come over and be with her.
Understood. So from there you came back to St. Martin or Statia?
No, I actually came back to St. Martin. I actually did my internship again at GB. I did... I'm actually a process control engineer, so I program PLCs and control systems. And my first project at GB was to do it at one of the pumps. The water pumps use what they call a PLC, and we program different things in it to make sure that when it starts up, when it shuts down, under what, how do I put it, under what parameters it should work. And I was able to save about 60% of the energy that we were using to supply water to the St. Peter's area by initiating VFD. They call it a variable control system that will allow the pumps to slow down and speed up according to the demand of the clients. So that was my first experience actually working at GB on that level, and I thought it was a really cool thing. At that point, there was never a student that actually implemented something into a system.
The organization.
Correct. So normally you would have a little project in the back of the room somewhere, and you bring it. And I was able to actually implement something that would help the island and would help GB save money. So I thought that was really amazing, and I decided to come and work at GB at that time. I worked here for 6 years, and then I moved on and started my own company and started to do my own thing until now I'm back at GEBE.
Okay. So you started your own company, I guess, in the same line of engineering?
Engineering, correct. Engineering, consultancy and stuff.
Okay, cool. So, well, having worked at GEBE then, literally from since you're a younger man,
Yes.
you're still a young man.
I see the gray hairs.
That's probably the stress. But as a young man and building, basically, having that company offer you the opportunity to build your career.
Right.
How was it then? Upon finding out that the opportunity to be temporary CEO was on the table, and how did you even find out about it?
I was approached and asked if I was willing to do it for a short time until the board could have gotten everything organized to have the other managers there. I thought about it. I called my dad and I said, "Boy, I'm not sure if I want to do that. GEBE is a hot plate." And he said to me, "Hey, listen, sometimes tough jobs are for tough people. And if it was an easy job, everyone would do it. You wouldn't get the opportunity anyway." So I looked at it. I sat down. I talked to my family, and I decided, it's a challenge. It's something that I would like to do to help the community, help GEBE. I think I could bring positive contribution to GEBE. And then I decided, okay, I'll try it out, and I'll do my best at it in the meantime. And I'm here.
Okay. So speaking of hot plate. There was a fire that broke out at the power plant, and from my perspective, I don't think that the explanation or the whole story was well reported.
Right.
When that took place. So can you detail, what exactly took place at the power plant, and was it something that affected the plant in any way?
Actually, no. It was normally before we do any work at the power plant, there's called a hot works permit. They do an assessment of the location that the work is going to be done, and there's a permit that is then given by the maintenance of the power plant so that you can actually carry out the works that you need to do. In that permit, there's a certain amount, there's a checklist that you need to then execute and put fire extinguishers and different things. And we have fire watch people that sit and make sure that if there's a fire that we can handle it. What actually happened is somehow a spark got into an area that it shouldn't have, and it caused a fire in the pit. In a pit that had some oil in it, and that's basically what happened. I must commend all the GEBE workers. They sprung into action. They used the fire extinguishers that we had, and we out the fire within like 5 or 6 minutes. The fire was completely out. There was a secondary fire that came because of the pit that was closed. Some smoke was coming over to the other section, and they handled that as well, and made sure that it was out. And by the time the fire department was there, everything was literally out, and everyone's kind of cleaning up and waiting for them to come to assess the fire. There was no damages, there was no outages because of the fire. Within very short, people started to get back to work and do what they needed to do. The power plant people are very resilient, I must say. They care about the company. They try hard, and it's very, very difficult work down there, and they did it with as much valor as they could.
Okay. So interesting you mentioned what you said just now, and I say interesting because really, the workers at the power plant are sort of the backbone in a sense of GEBE, not just GEBE, of the island itself.
Right. Very much so.
And it also, when that incident took place, there was also videos that circulated of workers from the power plant, right, detailing their work conditions. Right. And so, while understanding that you're a temporary CEO, what can you say you've done to address the concerns of those workers, as well as your relationship with the union in addressing the concerns of the workers? Well,
we did address them. We spoke to the union, and we had some good talks about things that we can do to improve our safety situation at the plant. In every company, you are going to have challenges. There's no company that has absolutely no challenges. Otherwise, wouldn't be a company worth running. There are challenges within GEBE that needs to be addressed, and we will do them. We're going to do it together with the union. We're going to do it together with the people. We're going to do it together with management. But the key word is together. And what I've been focusing on is to try and have people work together to actually find solutions that help the company, and not just trying to create narratives within the media and different things to discredit the company. I feel like GEBE gets a lot of bad reputations just because there's no one defending it. Everyone just wants to rip into it. While we are the only company providing light and water, we have been a company that provides water and light at better rates than most Caribbean islands, but yet we hear that our prices are very high. We are better than average in the Caribbean with providing electricity in a constant, reliable manner, and yet we hear we're no good. And it's very difficult for employees to stay focused and stay motivated when we hear only negative things about the hard work that is being carried out. GEBE in itself, we have great people at the plant. The plant manager is a very intelligent and hardworking guy, and we are trying to work as much as possible to increase safety awareness at the plant, increase equipment, increase spending in terms of trainings and stuff. There were trainings, just that you may know, with the fire department in 2019 and 18, trainings because of COVID weren't able to continue, and now we are looking at, okay, how can we get those trainings back up and going, so that we can make sure that all workers, new and old, are continually trained and up to date with new methods and new safety regulations and new everything. And it's important for a company like GEBE to continue learning and not stay being comfortable in what we're currently doing.
So I took note of what you said, particularly relating to I guess people's complaints and the negative press that GEBE gets. What may contribute to that, perhaps, is that it compounds to the frustrations, the general frustrations people have, on St. Martin, stuff like cost of living and so forth. Because indeed, St. Martin, our rate is better than that of several other islands. I think that people look at St. Martin as this gem that has a lot of potential, can be so much along further. And we still experience, current being cut, load shedding, and so forth.
Right. Well, unfortunately, living on an island and you only have one power plant. We do have two power plants, but they're not interconnected.
What do you mean by that?
There's a power plant on the French side, but we don't really share.
I thought you mean maybe there's a
no, GEBE don't have two power plants. No. However, living on an island, you're always going to have a situation where you're going to get power outage. That is a common thing around any island. The fact is, in general, and let's consider America or Europe. They have most of their power plants connected and interconnected with each other. So it's not that they don't have issues at their power plant. As a client, you just don't notice it because the power may come. System. The power may come from France, and while you're in Holland and you don't know. The power may come from LA while you're in Las Vegas, but you don't know where the power is coming from. Each power plant always have shutdowns. It's something that happens, and we can do as much as we can do with reliability, but I don't foresee us becoming as reliable as a bigger country that has more resources and has more power plants and more power. I don't see us being able to meet that. I do see that there is still room for improvement, that's for sure. And I think we are looking at how we can make our grid more reliable, how that we could probably do battery storage that might help us. Those are all things that are on the table that is now being discussed, and how we can make our grid more reliable and more resilient to problems.
So then, given what you said in terms of the challenges in in ensuring reliability in current. Also factoring in what you said about, for example, Europe with their shared network, let's say.
Correct.
Has there been any move for GB to work with, I think it's EDF, right? On the French side?
The problem is EDF is a heavily subsidized company. And the French has a state that if you're in a French area, you pay pretty much the same for electricity in any French territory. GB doesn't have that because GB needs to be able to provide enough profit to be able to invest in technology and expand and grow as necessary.
Just like a socialist versus a capitalist.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Correct. So it's a completely different way of doing business. EDF doesn't necessarily have to worry about profit because it is subsidized. They run on light fuel, they run on diesel, which is actually more expensive than heavy fuel that we run on. So if they would have to pay their bills according to what we do it, they would probably pay 3 times as much as we do. Granted that they are a company that's interlinked or has a bigger network of management and help and networking. They can get a lot of support from France and Guadeloupe and those other places to assist them, while GB has to create that support system on its own.
Gotcha.
And they have to do it from their own cash flow. We need to invest in different technology from our own cash flow.
I have a question. Does that so the same setup that ADF has with France and so forth? Does the other islands in the kingdom have that with the Netherlands? Okay, so that can you get support from the Netherlands in that regard?
Well, GB is just an NV, it's a government-owned NV. Obviously, we can ask for support and try and get it via grants and stuff. So we can look into those ways of doing things. But in general, the company is basically on our responsibility. Our responsibility to do it.
So how was it like overall? Entering as a temporary CEO. What was the state of the company like? Of course, again, the company went through some tumultuous times, let's say, shifting of the management board, board members, and so forth. So upon entering, what was your focus? What was your priority?
My focus was trying to make sure that GB works according to best business practices, to make sure that policies and procedures are followed, make sure that everyone is responsible, and make sure that the general modus operandi is to make sure that power is there, because in a company like GB, it's not only about providing power. The initial phase of any company is first getting clients and then getting power and then getting lines and then getting their network get up. But at this point, GB is now 61 years old. So now the focus should be more on how do you manage it? How do you make sure that the correct personnel are in the right places? How do you make sure that redundancy is planned in? How do you make sure all those type of things are done? And that was kind of my focus to start looking at, because we're very good at after hurricanes. After hurricanes, GB is an awesome company. We come in, we make sure that everything is fixed, and we're back and running within a very short time, much better than most Caribbean islands as well, because GB is one of the only Caribbean islands that has the network on the ground. Most Caribbean islands would have overhead lines, so their network takes longer to get back up. And GB is very good at and very resilient at those type of things. What we do need to start looking into is making sure that we are good when it's not an emergency. That we are running the company, looking forward to efficiency and looking forward to more productivity, and that's where I think our focus should be.
Okay, and what do you say you've hit some of those targets in the past few months?
Well, we have. I've been spending a lot of time at the power plant, and we have made, I think it was 4 major overhauls for this year. That would mean, and we were doing that specifically for the hurricane season, so that we could be more reliable and engines run more efficiently when they just get overhauled. It costs almost $2 million to overhaul an engine.
Wow.
where you kind of take it all the way down, you put in new parts and you put it back together, and that engine works a lot more efficient than if it wasn't overhauled. So by overhauling the engines, you make sure that you get some efficiency. You make sure also that you get more reliability from them. And I think from since May, you realize we had some outages and stuff. And from since then, our system has become more and more reliable since then.
Okay. So speaking of reliability, we are now entering the season. Many were looking forward to the high season,
right?
No matter if it hasn't necessarily touched the numbers like before the pandemic and Irma, but given the expected rise in tourists and our capacity, how prepared is GEBE for this, and do can the public expect more load shedding to take place as a result?
I don't expect it. But sometimes you can't predict it. The engines has many different sensors on it, and they shut down for many different reasons. And so you can't necessarily say there won't be any power outages. What you can do is you can provide as much preventative maintenance as necessary as possible, so that you could eliminate the chances of outages, and that's what we have done. We have made sure that we have overhauled and maintained most of our engines, and in that way have put ourselves in the best position that we don't have any power outages.
Okay.
Obviously, the load is growing, and we obviously need to make further investments in more engines and more capacity at the power plant. But that is something that we're definitely looking into, and for the long term.
Okay. How does the system work when it comes to managing the power grid?
Well, the power grid works like this. In the event of power shortage, of something happening, the system automatically, to protect itself, starts shutting down cables. So we would, and that's done in a predetermined way. So there's a list of which cable go up first, second, and third, and there's also, and that's done based on priority. So first thing, we want to make sure that we get power back to the hospital. We want to make sure that all the critical infrastructure all have power back fast. We want to make sure that places that where the water pumps are connected, that they also get power, so that people can get water, because first thing you want is no power and also no water. Mm-hmm. So in a predetermined way, it switches out cables to make sure that it can give as much power as possible, seeing whatever circumstances has just happened. So that's basically why you would see that every time Dutch Quarter goes out, everybody say, yeah, Dutch Quarter always goes out. It's because Dutch Quarter is higher up on the list, and that's one of the cables that goes out first, or Belvedere. That's one of the cables that goes out first. And not because we don't like Belvedere, it's just because the critical infrastructure goes first, and then the residential areas goes secondly, and so that's why you may see something like that, that there's a cable tripping or a generator going down. Mm-hmm. The moment a generator goes down, normally we should have an N-2 principle, meaning that two of the biggest generators should go down without affecting power to the island. At this point in time, it is not so. We need to make investments. We need to make sure that we can get more capacity at the power plant, to make sure that we can supply power even though generators go down, because unfortunately they do.
Okay. Well, I hope that the residents of Belvedere and Dutch Quarter don't get at you. But my question...
we love all our clients. So,
right? I feel that. It's all good. But my question, based on what you just said, is what is the percentage then of the island's underground connectivity?
Well, we are about 95%.
So almost the whole island.
Almost the whole island.
What are the areas that are still?
There are some areas in St. Peter, South Ward, and some areas in Middle Region and Dutch Quarter that has some overhead lines. We are actually busy with a project with the World Bank that they are going to be start putting these lines underground. Problem a lot
So
of
they'll
time,
be funding that
right,
project.
right.
Okay.
But a lot of time we have problems. Not that we don't want to put the lines, but landowners doesn't want to give us access to put a transformer house or to cut where their land is. So if we want to put a line from here to over there, we need to speak to everyone that owns that land and ask them to allow us to go ahead and put
Okay.
our lines.
I figure that could be challenged, maybe whether a demand for cost, but also if the land is, I guess maybe if it's succession land, that may be an issue.
Correct. Yeah. So based on those things, those are challenges that the planning department always face. Of can we get access to the different areas within our network to be able to do that? We would like to put some more tanks in different areas as well for water, but again, you need to find strategic places to put those tanks, and when you do find them, you need to be able to purchase the land, and if it's not for sale, it's very difficult.
Interesting.
and obviously, if a client knows that GEBE needs it, and everyone thinks GEBE has a lot of money, then you have a whole lot of negotiating to do as well.
Yeah, I understand. Okay, so again, that's why I'm glad that you came on the program to share some of the challenges that the company faces.
Right.
But we'll be right back. We're going to take a quick break, so stay tuned. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to the News Behind the News with Ralph Tab on Mix 94.7 FM. And today I'm joined with the CEO of GEBE, Mr. Mauricio Dembrook. And I'm glad to have him on the program, to share a bit of what's going on in the company. And then, of course, we usually tend to have a lot of questions as far as matters like the fuel clause, why does current continually go sometimes. And so I'm glad that you're here to, basically update the public.
Right.
So we last left off on the fact that, GEBE has 95% of its lines underground.
Correct.
And you mentioned that some of the challenges you face in finishing that project itself is like landowners.
Right.
And the company's ability itself to maybe purchase land and so forth. But even on that subject of land, it is widely known in the community that GEBE owns land in Hope Estate. And I believe that was intended to build a storage center, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So has there been any activity in this regard, and how important or critical is this an asset for the company?
Well, I believe it's an important asset for the company. I think what's important for any utility company is flat land. St. Martin, in terms of land, land is a very scarce commodity here, and GEBE needs to use their resources in the correct way. And I believe that having flat land available for storage and available for other infrastructures would be a good asset for the company. And we have started to put some storage, temporary storage, on that land, and eventually, hopefully, that it will be then expanded to house different buildings of ours, maybe even the distribution building, where you have sufficient parking, where you have enough storage, where you have all your materials in the same location as your distribution department, and I think that would be a great opportunity for the company to become much more efficient than we are right now. We are currently renting. Since Irma, we are now renting a property in the Soccer Garden, the Patelco building.
Yeah.
And before that, we were also renting a storage facility on Soccer Garden Road as well. So it would be great to have those facilities on our own property.
Gotcha.
That we don't have to make those expenditures anymore, and we could then be saving money and moving forward in the correct way.
Okay, that's great. So as far as that is concerned, because I'm about to ask also about the building in town,
Right.
but how is the finances of GEBE, and how would you describe GEBE's bounce back since the lockdown?
Well, we are not yet back to pre-AMR days. We are actually around 15% lower than average in income, and I think you would recognize that after Irma and after the COVID-19 lockdowns, with people losing their jobs, it's becoming more and more difficult for people to pay. So we try and accommodate and make payment plans for people so that they could actually pay their bills and allow us to still continue with our cash flow, because even though it sounds like a lot of money that GB gets in for the operations
The
of GB, which is,
expenditure, yeah.
for the expenditures, I mean, I could make $1 million tomorrow, but if I spend $999,000,
money you actually have.
I don't really have
Yeah.
much money, and that's where it becomes very important for GB, as how do you go about making expenditures that makes the company more efficient, because efficiency costs money. Everyone who wants to save money needs to spend money to save money, and that works the same way for GB. So we need to then look at, okay, what are we going to do with our money now? How are we going to invest it so that the company could start making returns on their money, so that we could be able to run more efficiently, effectively.
Okay. So as far as efficient is concerned as well, one of the big ticket or big topics is climate change and the need for renewable energy.
Right.
And of course, this is a topic as well that has been a matter of discussion on the island, as far as GB moving past fuel and using
Right.
solar or wind or even energy from the sea and stuff. So what exactly is possible for St. Martin where renewable energy is concerned?
Well, as soon as we start getting sunshine at night, it would be a lot easier for us to go to solar panels. But until then, it becomes difficult, because it makes you're making an investment into solar panels. If you're doing it either off from your own cash, or you're going to do it by a loan, or you're going to do it via a grant. If you were expending money and to create a different system, it means that you're also increasing your cost. At this point in time, fuel clause is not a cost to GB. Fuel clause is a straight through cost. So whatever we pay in fuel is transferred directly to clients. So it's not that GB says, okay, we're going to keep some of the fuel clause for ourselves so that we can enrich in the company and pay the rest to our fuel supplier. It is a straight through cost. So by us investing in solar panels, it means that we're going to quote unquote subsidize the fuel clause, because we don't make any money by reducing the amount of fuel that we use. So if we're going to invest in the panels to reduce the amount of fuel or dependency on fuel, it would not add anything to the bottom line of GB, which is not an issue, but we would have to then find funding from other places to maintain it, and so then therefore it may actually cost the price of electricity to go up. So it's kind of a trade-off to what do you want? Do you want renewable energy that's more expensive, or do you want non-renewable energy that is cheaper? And I think at that point we need to kind of make a decision in what direction that we want to go.
But what can be done then to at least create a sort of a balance?
What can be done is that we maybe restructure the way that we calculate our prices, so that when investments are made by GB, we are able to make a return on it, and reduce our dependency on fuel. We right now use heavy fuel, which is very inexpensive compared to diesel, and that keeps our costs down, because only half of the money, more or less, that you pay in your bill. So if you have a bill of 200 guilders, 100 go to the fuel supplier, and only 100 stays at GB. So when we give, let's say for the senior citizens, we give sometimes a relief, and they get 20 guilders off their bill. If they had a bill of 200 guilders, they would say, yeah, but it's only 20 guilders. But remember, 100 guilders goes directly to Sol, and that's nothing to do with us. So we're actually giving you a 20% discount on GB's money, but you're looking at it as only 20 guilders, which is 10% of the 200 guilders, but it's not that way. We only run our business on about half of the money that you pay on your bill, and that takes care of all our fees, all our employees, all of those other things, and also our capital investment. So we use that money to invest in infrastructure and to maintain our equipment and to make sure that the company stays running.
Okay, that's interesting of a response, because GEBE has always been seen as a very profitable company. I think it has indeed been profitable.
Maybe in the past.
In the past.
Maybe in the past.
But of course, due to a lot of reasons, and not even just with Irma, but prior, the company hasn't been as stable or as strong as it could be.
Right.
But you mentioned something that comes to mind as far as basically, let's say if your income is split in half between GEBE and Sol, does Sol's now dominance of the fuel market, do you foresee that maybe affecting GEBE in any way?
Well, that's still to be discussed. We're looking to see, how much we can partner with Sol and how much we need to have our own independency. There are some discussions about it, and it's the reality of the world now. Sol is also looking to go green, so they want to be in the market of green energy as well. So we want to look into all those options and see what is the best option for GEBE in terms of our sustainability as a company, and those are all things needs to be done with a feasibility study, and we need to sit down. And I think together we could solve a lot of problems, but it needs to be together. They can't have much divide. We need to be able to sit down and trash out problems and solve them internally, and make sure that we're all on the same page, so that real investments could be made to increase our reliability, resiliency, and independence as a company. Because the world is changing.
Okay, and as far as GEBE, so where does GEBE stand as well? I know that recently there was an announcement of this grid market made by the government.
Right.
Will GEBE be having any cooperation with that?
Well, we are looking into that as well. They are working together with GEBE to get some data to see if we could find ways to make the island more resilient and get some technology and some assistance from abroad to help us to make our grid more sustainable. But again, we have to look at everything and make decisions accordingly to make sure that we are sustainable.
Okay. And so in addition to the project with the World Bank for underground current, is there any other project you guys are working on with the trust fund?
At this point, not. At this point, we're doing the underground project. And we're busy with looking at the plan of how do we move the company forward. What should the company start looking like? How much automation should we introduce?
The plan you're referring to is a strategic plan?
Correct.
Okay.
All right. So how much automation should we implement? How does the company look over 5 to 10 years? How does the employees? How can we retrain them if necessary to go into a new way of doing business? All of those things needs to be approached and looked at to make sure that we can grow as a company and also become a learning organization and be able to become a flexible organization, because GEBE is a very big, rigid company. There's a lot of procedures. There's a lot of red tape. There's a lot of bureaucracy, and in these times, back in the 90s and 80s, that was the way to run business. But nowadays, businesses are becoming much more leaner, much more flexible, much more the ability to change course within short times. As a big company like GEBE, especially with the social aspect in it, we have to consider all our employees. We have to consider what our employees could do, how we can make sure that they can also stay relevant and continue to supply services to GEBE so that we can supply services to our customers. So all of those things needs to be looked at so that we become a more lean and flexible company.
Okay, it's good that you mentioned that because indeed automation and the enhancement of the digital world
Correct.
is at the forefront of many large corporations and so forth.
Correct.
And it's something that we really can't ignore in St. Martin because the technology advances, meaning to say that there is a less dependency on human beings. But I'm glad that you mentioned the need to still assess, the team that you have, the staff that you have, and find ways in which they can be retrained, to still function. Because of course that something like that is
everyone gets a bit scared about that.
Yeah.
Everything gets scared about what happens to my job if they start automating things. And I think it's important, especially as a small island community as ours, to make sure that our employees still stay working and that they still stay relevant and they could still feel confident that they are putting that their input is necessary into the company. And if that happens, I believe that we can together make the change necessary to make the company strong again.
Okay. Something I mentioned earlier, I realized I didn't get back to, was the former main office, the building in town, because the land is still there. Are there any what updates are there as far as rebuilding it, or will something else be built in its place?
Well, we don't know as yet. As I mentioned again, things are changing in technology. Right now, you can pay your bill online. There's a lot of information that you can get from our Facebook page and on our online platform. So the question then is it really necessary to have a big building where everyone comes and pay their bill? The question is then, how much office space is really necessary to make sure that we can supply people? Maybe we should have smaller offices in different parts of the islands. All of those things are now.
I guess you're also looking into the cost of that too.
Correct. So you have to look at all of those things and see what does GEBE look like in the next couple of years, and to make a decision on, okay, how do we go about this building? What should it look like? What is the functionality of it? How much people does it need to house? Those are the things that we need to look at before we take a step in the
so you just don't want to jump into developing a building, and I got you. No. So given the lockdown, one of the things that took off is remote work.
Correct.
What percentage of GEBE's employee can or presently work remotely? Or do you allow that?
Currently none. Currently everyone works in the office. But while the lockdown was on, there were people that were working remote. And that has also changed the way of working around the Caribbean islands, because around the Caribbean islands, even in St. Martin, we have a very traditional way of working. You go to work, you sit there for 8 hours, and you do what you need to do, and you go home. While in Europe, you work 3 days a week. You could work from home, and as long as you get your targets met, and that's where before you start saying, okay, let's go and work remote, you must then change the way
the work culture
of work culture. So you need to now set targets. People need to know that it's not a vacation day that you stay home. There's productivity needs to happen.
Correct.
Yeah. So all of those things need to be taken in consideration by management.
Do you see GEBE being able to move in that direction?
Absolutely. I think it should be the direction that we should move into, because again, I think remote working provides flexibility for parents who has kids, single parent who has kids, who wants to be able to pick up their kids from school and do things with them, and then work at night when then they can kind of schedule their time. So it's not only about what GEBE was.
Community oriented.
Correct. So people could then schedule their work schedule as long as it works within the schedule that GEBE needs. It's something that should be discussed, and I think if we are moving forward, we should also look at allowing people to be able to be home and work and be able to be with their kids and work.
Okay, interesting. And then the other building that's currently being used by GEBE, was that fully repaired as well?
We're actually we're actually going to repair that building. We're busy now looking for a location to put our workers. We have a couple options. We're trying to get into the final stages of negotiation. How
far along do you see that taking place?
It should have already started, so I think it should start within a short time. I'm hoping for it to start before the end of this year still, so that we can do the maintenance on that work, change the roof and change the facade. It's been a building that's there for a long time. As you can see, I painted the building that I now sit into, and I'm trying to give as much of a facelift to the company so that the people could consider, where you work, you spend so much time there. It's important that you feel proud, and you feel inspired by the places that you work, and that's something that I think it's important for GEBE as well. Okay,
noted. Something else that came to mind then with that plot next to the main, or where the farmer main office was, people have always asked about exactly parking. So you can say maybe a layered parking, paid parking.
All of those things are all options.
Okay, gotcha.
And I think if we use our resources in the correct way, I wouldn't take anything off the table until it's completely discussed and figured out what direction do we want to go.
Okay. So another, let's say, matter of a hot plate would be the 12.5% cut in employment benefits that was basically co-signed by the Constitutional Court.
Right.
How has GEBE, how will GEBE implement this cut to its workforce?
Well, that is very it's a sensitive subject because it affects people's income, maybe not salaries, because we're not trying to touch salaries, but there are additional benefits. It would affect it. We had numerous meetings together with my management team to discuss it. We have come up with some plans that we want to first discuss with the unions, and we want to figure out, okay, how is this law really going to be implemented? Is it really going to be retroactive from 2020 till now, or is it something that's going to start from since the court made a decision or not? Those are things that we're trying to get some clarity on. Then we're going to discuss with the unions and probably with the government as well to find workable ways before we start discussing with employees, and they could also have an input as how we're going to. I think the only way we can get through this is together. I think it's very important that all stakeholders are involved and that we all sit around the table and find ways that we can all get through this process. Government made a decision because they thought it was the right decision to do at that time, and now we have to make decisions to how to comply with what government decided at that time. It's a fact of life, and you could sit and cry about it, but it's not going to help until you make a decision and make a move.
Okay, so in the past months, we've seen challenges with GEBE and its supervisory board members resigning. There's now a new board in place, but still not yet complete. Are you able to share how has it been? Still leading the company, manning the fort, as I said in the beginning. Now that there's at least some members on the board, and overall your relationship with the government.
Well, again, it's important that we work together. Um, there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of things that's going on in the media, that's going on within government, that's going on within GB. And what I try to do is try and not come with preconceived notions. Just come in as open as possible and try and see if we could just find solutions that are feasible and workable for everyone involved. That there has been court cases and that there has been issues between the supervisory board and the shareholder. It's something that can happen. I mean, even with my partner at home, we also had arguments, but that doesn't mean that I love her any less. There are problems
when it spills over in the streets, though.
Well, that is true. But if at home we can't resolve the problem, someone needs to help us. And in St. Martin, that's the situation. The board and the supervisory board couldn't internally resolve a problem, and they asked for help from the courts. I mean, in St. Martin, it's taken out of context and it's blown up in the media. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with people disagreeing with each other. And once a decision has been made, then you make your decision as board members or supervisory board or shareholder, and then you move on and you try to continue making sure that we are here to serve the people, and electricity and water is important, and that's what it's about.
Gotcha. Okay, so given the time, I just have just two more questions for you. One of them, touching on the fact that GB recently, not really recently, but a few months ago went to court, and the final verdict came out recently, earlier in November, as it relates to conflicts with the former supervisory board and the internal auditor. So my question for you is, how is the company looking to move past this situation, but also, I guess, looking to enhance this particular department, which clearly has been a matter of concern, but is also critical to the operations of GB?
Well, at GB, I like to keep employee matters, company employee matters. I don't like to. I would not discuss employee matters in public. We are looking forward to finding a workable solution. We are looking into making sure that everyone is on board how we move forward, and that's really the most I could say about that at this point in time. Let's see how it works out. That's all I have to say.
Okay, so my final question still kind of touches on employee matters, but that question is, looking at all that GB has gone through, what can you say of the employee morale, though? How motivated are people?
Yeah,
because the public, those of us, the public itself is like, well, another government-owned company caught up in let's say maybe sagas.
Right.
So for your employees, what is also being done to give them a sense of progress will be seen.
It's difficult to say. GB was ran by Mr. Lambert for many, many years, and he ran the company in a certain way. And then Mr. Brooks came, and he decided to run a company in a different way. And then there was multiple changes of directors and supervisory boards. So the company kind of created its own little culture. And that has just been the case. I think in terms of employee morale, I think in terms of St. Martin's morale, we all been through a lot. I think going through Irma and then going through a pandemic, and that we're still going through, and having less money available and having so many discussions between management and boards and shareholder, it is difficult, but I believe that GB employees really love the company. I believe that most people come there because they want to contribute positively to the company, and their morale might be a little down, but they are really trying to make sure that the company is good because they love the company just as I do.
Okay. Any final words? Any final words?
Well, the only thing I could say is, again, everything can be solved if with enough communication and with enough will to solve it. Everyone we could all come through this, but we need to work together, and we need to make sure that we're open-minded and we don't come with preconceived notions, and we just come to solve a particular problem. If we continue solving each problem as they come along, when we look back, we will see that we solved a big problem. So I think a lot of problems seem complicated, but they are easy if we just put our minds to it.
Gotcha. All right, Mr. Dembrook, thank you so much for coming on the program. It was good chatting with you. I also hope that to our listeners and viewers, that they get a better perspective of what's taking place at our only electricity and water company. So do take care, and until next time.
Thank you.